Hi, thank you all for coming. My name is Jason Saul. I'm the moderator, although I don't like that title. It sounds too flat. I'm the provocateur of today's session. And this is not just a panel of talking heads. Actually, this is going to be a panel of talking bodies. These guys have a lot to say, and I'm excited to share them with you today. But we also are going to invite you to be part of the conversation. So a couple administrative announcements. One, turn off your cell phones if you haven't figured that out by now. Please do so. And everyone feel free to Twitter, blog, and engage in social media affairs today. So thank you all for coming. The title of the session is called Beyond Charity, From Reports to Returns. It's off script, but we actually wanted to call it The End of Charity, From Reports to Returns. So we really want to sort of provoke the conversation about where things can go. On the panel with me is Zika Abzuk, who is a senior manager for Cisco. She runs corporate social responsibility for the Middle East and North Africa and is based in Tel Aviv. And we also have Ned Breslin, who's the CEO of Water for People. So we have some really interesting perspectives. And most importantly, we have all of you. And one of the things that I think we miss out on too often is not engaging the audience. So we're going to make sure we really do that today. And in fact, I want to start off with a quick polling question for you. So how many people in the room today are right-handed? Okay, and how many people in the room are left-handed? Okay, about 6 or 7, so about 10%. Finally, how many of you are actually ambidextrous?
Oh,
wow. Okay.
I thought you were just showing off the words, you know, that you
so,
know the words.
One of the ambidextrous people, we would like you to be a volunteer for our 4th chair today. So who wants to put their left or right hand up first to volunteer? Okay. I'm going to call on you. What is your name? Tracy. Tracy? Tris. How do you spell it? T-R-I-S. Okay, you got it right. Tris. So Tris, you are going to be our phantom 4th chair participant today. And so that also doesn't let all of the rest of you off the hook because we are going to make this a rotating 4th chair. So we'd like you to come up and join and participate. Tris, hang on a minute. We're going to come on after the conversation. Those ambidextrous guys are so amped up. But we'll get you mic'd up and we'll have you join after these presentations. But I ask you that for a reason, because we are living in a fundamentally different world today than we were only a few years ago. And I don't know if we have the slides queued up, sort of the first reset slide. We'll see. But the difference in the world today is that we are living in what Jeff Immelt from General Electric would call a fundamental reset. It is not just an economic reset, but is a social and psychological reset. And the interesting thing about this total reset world that we live in is that it isn't that people are spending less money. And it isn't that social issues are any more or less important. It's the fact that people are looking for value today. In fact, people are spending more money than they've ever spent globally and in the US economy before. But people want value. And there's a couple other phenomena that have come out of what I call this reset world. The first is that social problems have gotten worse. The environment, education, healthcare, creativity in the arts, most of the things that we all have held so dear are actually getting exacerbated. But at the same time, the market is starting to value the things that we always thought were so important. On some level, we won, right? Because social outcomes now have real economic value. It's not just a nice thing to do. Boeing literally can't build any more airplanes without more engineers out of the public schools. A Cisco can't sell any more routers without enough IT guys around the world and without developing emerging economies. Companies can't produce their products without water. We are in pain because we are not solving social problems. It's no longer just a do-good thing to have as a phenomenon. So the first major takeaway of what I call the social capital market is that social problems and social outcomes now have real economic value. The second is that it is okay to expect an economic return from doing good. Right, you have Jed Emerson, who's here with us today, one of my mentors, and I'm a big fan, the pioneer of social return on investment and blended value and impact investing and a lot of those things. Those are all happening because we realize that people want both. We want a Prius that actually makes an impact on the environment and is good for our pocketbook. We want to give money through microloans and we want a return. People want both an economic return and a social impact, and it's okay to expect both today. So what are the implications of this social capital market? Well, the biggest implication is that we need to completely rethink the way in which we're going about social change. Because most corporations have set up their corporate social responsibility efforts to focus on mitigating risk and compliance. And most nonprofits have focused on doing good, running social programs and hoping they add up to something. But the fact of the matter is, we very well may have set the bar too low. On the corporate side, if all we're doing is trying to make the world marginally less worse, is that really what we're about? I mean, you think about Google's tagline. Anyone know what it is? Do no evil. Really? I mean, is that the best we can do? Not be evil? And frankly, the mentality in many of the nonprofit organizations is doing good. Right? We have a social program, we're going to measure some results and show that we've served so many people and we want to do good. But there is a fundamental demand in the social capital market that we do more than just do good and not do bad. It is our calling today, and I believe the market is requiring us to raise the bar to solve social problems, not just do stuff and hope it adds up to something. And as someone who spends his life focused on measurement, I can tell you that the measurement bar is raising too, from just demonstrating outcomes or demonstrating reports to focusing on returns. Are we getting an impact that is compelling? Are we producing high-value outcomes? So the implications of this shift to a social capital market from merely doing good are several. First, we are shifting from programs to solutions. Nobody wants to fund programs anymore. They want to buy impact. We want to buy solutions to social problems. We are also shifting from measurement and measuring outputs and even measuring results to measuring value. And finally, there's a shift from fundraising to selling impact. Right? And even if you start to look at the implications on the foundation side, there's a shift from not just giving away money, but purchasing results, purchasing impact, because foundations have certain outcomes they want to achieve as well, and so do corporations. So we're going to learn a lot about this shift today, but the fundamental proposition is this. In this social capital market world we live in, the opportunity for us is to tap into the engine of the economy, the engine of the market, not just live off the fumes. Last year, corporations in the United States generated $1.8 trillion in profits, the largest profits ever recorded in corporate history. Just happened last year. At the same time last year, the federal government rang up $1.6 trillion in debt. So where are you going to look to find the funding for social change? It ain't government, and it's not from leftovers from charity. It is by tapping into the engine of the economy, inserting ourselves into the stream of commerce. And the reason why I asked for the ambidextrous thinkers is because I want all of us to think ambidextrously today. This is not about talking about how nonprofits can be more fiscally responsible or corporations can be more socially responsible. And it's not even about social entrepreneurship. It is about finding a way to use the market to solve social problems, to tap into the engine of the market and to tap into the true market resources. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is from Al Gore, who says that more money circulates through markets in a single day than circulates through all governments in an entire year. Right? So we need to figure out who is going to pay the freight for doing the work we want to do, and how do we tap into those incentives and opportunities. So anyway, I'm excited to engage in the conversation. I want all of us to think as righties and lefties, ambidextrous thinkers today, and let's engage in some solutions. So first, Zika Abzuk is going to tell us a story about how the work that she's been doing inside Cisco is not just an ordinary run-of-the-mill corporate social responsibility program, but it's actually something extremely powerful that's had tremendous business value and also tremendous social impact. I think one of the most amazing things, having gone to visit Zika's program in Palestine, in Ramallah, was that as an observer of Israeli-Palestinian relations, we all knew it took something like 20 years to get Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin to shake hands on the west lawn of the White House. But Zika and her program, within 2 years, got Israelis and Palestinians to hug. That's powerful, and I want to hear about how it happened, so share with us.
Okay, thank you. So Jason promised you talking buddies, so I'm going to stand up and try to talk with all of me. So we wanted I would like to talk to you about how we take the market development approach. And do I have a clicker? That's the clicker? Let's see. This one, right? Okay. So this is the story about investing in Palestine. So in January 2008,
Maybe you can advance the slides.
Yeah, just please. Okay, in January 2008, John Chambers, our president and CEO, went to Ramallah and met with Abu Mazen and made a commitment that Cisco will invest $10 million in encouraging economic development in Palestine using ICT. And next, please. When we came to, and I got the honor to lead this investment, and right there and then, Abu Mazen appointed a group of people from his office and from the government and from the private sector to kind of give us the view of Palestine and let us understand what is needed to be done. And their ask was, they've asked us to help them develop a Palestinian high-tech industry. And they've asked us to kind of look at what happened in Israel and maybe kind of copy it in a condensed mode to Palestine. And in many respects, Israeli and Palestinians and Israel and Palestine are similar in more than one way. We don't have any natural resources. Well, at least in 2008 we didn't. They discovered the gas a while ago. So no natural resources, but the best resource both countries have is their people, educated, talented people, both in Israel and in Palestine. So we thought that would be a good start. Please. This is the result, actually. I'd like to start with the end. So, you know, on the left, you see how the pie of the GDP was distributed in Palestine before we started working. You can see that there is no ICT sector here. Today, you know, in 2010, and today it's even more, the information economy, the ICT sector actually contributes 11% to the GDP in Palestine. And we're very happy to have contributed to that. Next. You can leave now, but I'll tell you the story about how, you know, how we got, okay, all right. Tell you the story how, so in order to start to build a high-tech industry, you need to have a complete ecosystem. You need the talent, We knew the potential for talent was there. You need money and vehicles for investments. You need good universities. You need the role models that succeeded so others will follow. All of that needs to be there. This is actually, where you have the stars. When we started looking at the ecosystems and what exists in Palestine, a few of the building blocks of the ecosystem were there. A few needed enhancement, and a few weren't there at all. We could see that we could not do everything, but we selected the building blocks where we could bring added value, and brought additional partners with us to come along and help with the other building blocks, but we kept our eye on the complete ecosystem. Okay, that's an important point. Please. Now, we were talking about the business. So our business arm, the Cisco Corporate Business Development, the team that comes and makes the actual investments, comes to when you have companies, startup companies that actually already develop products for the global, innovative products for the global market, right there. They don't even look at a market when the companies are a Me Too kind of companies that adapt technologies that exist to the local market. When we came to Palestine, we didn't even have the Me Too companies yet. Okay, so that was just to bring the relevance to the business. So I'll tell you the story how it started. So when we got the mission, I took a few people from the Cisco office. We in Israel have quite a big R&D facility in Israel and an investment arm. And we decided to go to Jericho to meet with the ICT sector in Palestine to kind of understand what exists in the ecosystem. And I like to tell this story because to show the complexity on the ground. So that was a day before Independence Day, and we went to Jericho, and our friends waited for us in Jericho in one of the hotels there. But we got to the checkpoint, and because it was a day before Independence Day, there was a closure on the West Bank, and Palestinians couldn't come out, and Israelis could not go into Palestine. So we got stuck at the checkpoint. But then at the checkpoint, the Israeli soldier at the checkpoint said, well, don't despair. You can go. There's a gas station right outside of Jericho where you can go to. It's a no man's land. Both Israelis and Palestinians can go there. You don't need permits, and you can meet, and you can do your business there. So we went to the gas station. There was a large Bedouin tent in the gas station. So we rented the tent for the day, and the whole of the ICT sector came to see us in the tent, and that's where we had the meetings. So, and when we saw what existed in Palestine and we understood the ecosystem, we could see that we cannot just start with investments, with the actual investments, business investments. It was very obvious that we have to start with building capacity of the companies, of the sector in general, of the different organizations, the Chamber of Commerce, the other organizations that will support the complete sector. So we decided to start with building capacity of the people, of the companies, but in a way that will eventually will turn into businesses. Because for us, this will be the most sustainable way to create economic development, and also it will develop the market for our business to come in. So that was now when we met the people in the tent, we were really impressed with the entrepreneurs that we met. We met people who, although the economy at the time was almost coming to a halt, there were people who started their own companies, ICT companies, with 20, 30 employees who provided for, and could provide for those families. They worked mostly within the ICT sector. And they came to us and they said, we have talented people and we have the know-how, and we could offer outsourced services like R&D and testing to companies, international companies around the world. But when we come and offer our services to different companies, they say, okay, they ask about what we can do. We tell them and say, okay. And then they ask, where are you from? And when we say we're from Palestine, they say, no, this is an area that's colored red on our map, it's a conflict area, we cannot take the risk. And they've asked us to change the image of Palestine as a place open for business. And one of the challenges was, they said maybe Cisco can outsource R&D work to Palestine. Now, at the time, I thought it was like a great idea. I said, wow, this is such a great idea. What a shame we were not going to be able to do it. But then, I said, oh, maybe we could. And Cisco in Israel has a big R&D center, as I said. We have more than 500 engineers that develop the cutting-edge technology for Cisco. And we, in Israel, outsource work to a company in India, which is a few time zones away, far away. We usually have difficulties with the accent. It takes, we don't get to meet each other very often, and it's difficult. And here we have untapped talent right there in Palestine. So it wasn't easy, but we did make a good case for corporate and said, we can do it. Actually, our R&D leaders, our R&D leaders actually took the challenge. In R&D, in engineering, you always have projects you really want to do, but don't have the funding for. Like, we probably all share this feeling. But so we thought that with our commitment, we can fund the first projects. And 3 of our R&D business units decided to take the challenge and outsource projects that they always wanted to do but couldn't to 3 Palestinian companies. We actually had 20 Palestinian companies came and offered their services, and out of the 20, we selected 3 companies and started outsourcing work to them. And through the work, actually, what happened was that we built the capacity of those companies. We started small. We started with 20 engineers who worked on kind of projects that are nice to have. Today, 3 years later, we are employing 40 engineers that are part of the integrated of the teams and are working on the cutting edge technology of those business units. And so that's one. And we, the CSR team, exited out of this maybe a year and a half ago. We gradually stopped funding it. The business units picked up the cost and are very happy with the work. And we have 40 Palestinian engineers working with the Israeli engineers in Cisco. And this thing, it kind of cascades to the families. They have different they made friends, I would say. Now, so this is one thing. We thought this was a good story to tell. So we took this story and together with our Palestinian companies, started visiting other international companies, even our competitors, like HP, that we said we might compete in the business world, but here, we can collaborate. And we shared with HP and Intel and Microsoft. We came to them and shared with them our story and our success. And now all of those companies are actually working and outsourcing work to companies in Palestine. And thank you. Thank you. So, so this is one of the major building blocks that we did. But through that, we could see the gaps that the Palestinian ICT sector. We made kind of a gap analysis and what was missing for the companies, and started different programs that built the capacity, and started incubation programs and helped establish a venture capital fund. Today, there are 3 venture capital funds investing in the ICT sector in Palestine. So if we can run so this is how, forgot to run it over, but they, and we can even go all the way to the end, because I would like to get to the final slide that says that now Palestine is open for business. Thank you.
Thank you, Zika. Thank you, Zika. That was excellent. And what I thought was particularly noteworthy was this was a social intrapreneur, someone who worked inside a large corporation had a bit of a mandate from CSR, but pivoted on that to create something that was not only entrepreneurial, but actually solved a social problem. They didn't do like a nice little demonstration project in Palestine for a year or two. They actually got USAID, got other corporations, and have made a meaningful contribution to the Palestinian economy. Next, I'd like to invite Ned Breslin up, and I think Ned is one of the most impressive social entrepreneurs I've ever met. He also rises to the standard of not just doing philanthropic demonstration, do-good projects, but is actually solving major social problems in this world and harnessing the power of the markets to put wind in his sails to do so. So Ned, tell us your story.
Wow. Yeah, that's really not a good intro at all. To understand what we're doing, everything Jason says about linking your programs with the market and kind of finding that shared value, we completely agree with. And what we found is organizationally we've been kind of morphing over the last number of years to get to this point. So the first step was really, let's be clear what those outcomes are. Let's stop selling, if you will. Let's stop selling projects, right, in the water space. So we do water and sanitation. Let's stop selling projects. Let's even stop selling programs in the traditional sense that we're going to do lots of projects in a particular area. We're going to do it really well. We're going to kind of sum it up. We're going to give you a report. We're going to justify the use of your money, and great, and hope that you kind of come back. Let's set the bar higher, and let's try to figure out what that outcome or that result is and drive all our programs towards that outcome. So what does that look like? We developed a program called Everyone Forever, right? And it's very simple. Every organization in the water and sanitation space has a mission statement that says something like, we want to live in a world where everyone drinks a clean glass of water, right? Or we want to eradicate water poverty. And then give us lots of money for projects and programs, and we'll tell you stories, and we'll get there. Well, the truth is we're not getting there. So you probably heard the Joint Monitoring Program, the MDG, the program within the MDG that monitors water and sanitation just announced that the water MDG was met, right? And the response from the water sector was dead silence. Because we know that it's not true. We know that Africa, Asia, and Latin America are riddled with broken projects. The stories we tell of there's a girl in ratty clothes with a bucket who's going through the bush, right, to find a dirty puddle, to fill water, put it on her head, walk back, miss school, give us money for a project to solve her problems. We know that story is problematic because we know that girl is walking past a broken hand pump on the way back to the puddle that she thought she had long abandoned, often with someone's name on it. So what we said was, let's do a program that says, if we really believe this, what would it look like? How could we model this and then grow it? So Everyone and Forever, no, go back. Everyone Forever, I'm not even going to show that other one. Everyone and Forever is very simple. It's 5 points. So we're going to work in districts around the world. We work in 30 and 10 countries, right? We're going to get every family, every school, and every clinic with water and sanitation, right? That's what everyone would look like in that area. That means you got to get the rich, you got to get the poor, you got to get the politically associated, you got to get the socially marginalized, got to get everyone, right? And we'll show if we do that, because that's a little microcosm of that bigger world. Second is, we're not going to give our programs enough money to do it. There's a big debate about not enough money for water and sanitation delivery for everyone in the world, so let's not model it as if we had enough money. Let's model it as if we didn't have enough money. And that has created a whole range of interesting things that have gone on. The main thing is there are two role players in the water and sanitation debate that need to be part of this debate, right? One is government has a responsibility to pay, so we will help government pull money down through their districts to allocate to water and sanitation. And our goal is that our financial footprint goes down as theirs goes up. In Bolivia, municipalities are now paying 50% of the cost of all the work. In India, we've gotten up to 75% in some districts. Our contribution is getting smaller and smaller. The second is communities have to pay, and have to pay in a way that gets everyone covered, right? So Water for People is putting its money to fill those gaps. with the goal of everyone gets water and sanitation over time. Third is we're going to monitor this for 10 years publicly, openly, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But at the end of the day, we're going to judge it on whether that gets embedded so that people are monitoring so you can see if that girl ever walks past the broken water point again. Two big outcomes. One is we must be judged on whether those districts that we work in, those 30 districts, if we get to that and we reach everyone, if systems are in place to repair and replace the systems, if water is available, right? If systems expand as populations expand, as they will, because the outcome must be that this district never needs another international water and sanitation NGO ever again. That's the point of the philanthropic investment, right? We're putting money in to eradicate this problem, so hold us to that outcome. If some other organization comes in because that girl has to walk past that hand pump, then we failed. And we're going to visually show that, and I'll show you how. And then the last point is if that district remains this island of great success in a sea of chaos around it, then we failed. So it has to replicate not by Water for People bouncing from municipality and district to district, but by building coalitions, building movements, supporting this work so it spreads. What that looks like is in Honduras right now we're working in 5 municipalities. 10 other municipalities have now come forward because one municipality got to full coverage. And he's now a rock star. He's in the paper, he's on the radio, and all the mayors are going, I want that. I want that. So it's bubbling. And so we're trying to figure out how to build a coalition to support that instead of Water for People just going, okay, well, give us more money and we'll do 10 more municipalities. In Bolivia, we have we're working in 7 municipalities, and these 2 new municipalities just came up to us and said, wow, we really want that too. This is really great. Can you help us? And we said, you know, we don't really want to bounce from municipality to municipality. And they said, no. We'll pay 100%. We just want to know, how did you do that? Help us do that. So that's good. Rwanda really likes our program, and what they're now talking about is making this program a national program. They have a goal that by 2020, everyone has water and sanitation in Rwanda, and they want all the other NGOs, UNICEF, all these different groups to actually follow this program of full coverage in the 19 districts in the country so that can actually be the first country in Africa with full coverage, really, not just fakely. So it's actually quite exciting. Now the challenge of that, and the way that we're succeeding is exactly what Jason said. Set a big goal, figure out where everyone's value comes into solving that problem. It's not Water for People alone. How do we bring beverage companies in who are really interested in water flowing too? Right? How do we create environments where communities and business and industry and tourism and ag are not competing for water resources, but actually cooperating and thriving? So we're bringing them in to solve that problem with us. It's very powerful. We'll never get there if we don't, so we realize we'll never get there if we don't blow up reporting, because reporting sucks, right? It sucks. So we've done this thing called Reimagining Reporting, and it's based on 3 principles, really simple, and then I'll draw it for you. One is reporting is actually the best time to reflect on what we're doing, right? It's the best time to sit back and say, what are we doing? How is money being used? What's working? What's not working? How do we show that? But we don't do that because we're saying, I need to report to that donor, I need to report to that donor, I need to report, and it's this narrow slice of that big program, and no matter how you structure it, that's how it is. Second is it's basically an ass-covering exercise, right? You gave me $1 million, I'm going to show you your $1 million really did a great thing, and I'm going to hope to get another $1 million, and you're basically trying to figure out how to feed that chain of you to a project officer, to their supervisors, to make everyone feel it's really good. That matters, but not this way. We write 60-page reports that no one reads, so let's stop. Let's just stop doing that. Bad idea. And what we really believe is if we do this right, we'll actually potentially blow up the aid transparency debate, because the aid transparency debate is actually quite fake. Basically says, here's money, and it went here, and I can even put it on a map. I might even show you a picture. I might even tell you a story. but it doesn't really show impact. It's just showing that I went to Walmart, paid 10 bucks, bought a Coke. Oh, I got one clap, excellent. No, I didn't, no. I wasn't shooting for that, no. So what we're doing is basically this. I gotta find a really graceful way to pull this off. This is all I'm taking off today. So what we're basically doing is, you can take this down if you could. We all have information, right? And so we're not going to be able to sell value. We're not going to be able to get people to understand value. We're not going to be able to really see this if we keep operating this way. So it's actually very simple. We have a country program, let's just say Bolivia, 7 municipalities that, with those principles of everyone forever, right? With the goal of going national. So the other output we're setting for ourselves, right, is in 4 countries, this Everyone Forever program, maybe not the words, but the principles go national. So you get a national program. Within 5 years, we want to see 4 examples of this. So that's what we're trying to do. We know a bunch of things. One is money has gone towards this goal, right? And we could break it down in any way, right? We can show it went to staff, it went to capacity building, and all that kind of stuff. We can even show what donors supported that. And we can say to those donors, here's a password, right? And then you'll see what your part of that is. And there's a risk there, right? People are going to go, oh, I don't really want to fund that. I want to fund that. But we're going to say, no, we're driving towards that outcome. You can dig down as low as you want. I can show you what staff were paid, right? But we can do this quite visually. So we have to understand where's our money going to, right? Then we have all this programmatic data. We have something called Flow that ACVO over here is helping us with now, Cisco Instrumental in Building. It's basically all kinds of monitoring data that focuses on, are we getting there? It's visual. We can show it's scored, so you can see how communities are doing, how districts are doing, and how we're doing across the country, right? And we can see, are we on track? And it's so you get little arrows. This is getting better. This is getting worse. All that stuff. We also know how much government's paying. We know how much communities are paying. We have all this information. But right now, we're not putting it together in any meaningful way. Because we're saying, I got to report to this donor on this little piece of the work, and because of that, I'm losing sight of the bigger picture. So let's stop doing that. Last part of it is we have user feedback, right? So what do all the people on the ground think of all this work? That's going to take time to build down because we work through partners. It's actually quite complicated, but basically, can we find a way to get their voices in? Then, all this is all the information we have, right? We have other things. We have videos. We have what people do. We have a whole bunch of other stuff, right? So the question is how does all this add up to this result? How do we figure that out? So what we do is we're going to be closing all of our offices for a week every year, and we're going to sit down with partners, with people from communities. We're going to go through this and really what's happening. How should we be spending our money that way? Is it achieving the result we're talking about? Is it creating those outcomes and those values that we're really trying to strive for? And let's tell our story. Let's reclaim our story through reporting, right? Because we got to drive towards this. So once we figure all this out, what's going to come out is basically, this is what we're doing well. This is what we suck at. These are the challenges we're faced, right? This is where we're going. These are the opportunities we see. So let's use the power of all the technology we have. Let's see if we can pull this together in some sort of story. It might be a video, it might be a series of infographics that basically becomes the report, right? So if you came last night, you saw these 2 beautiful videos of success. We can build that out. We can tell the story of what's working well, what's not working well. We can link into all of this. And our programs and the partners we're working with and everybody involved, all the corporations, all the foundations and everything, actually everyone's focused on that outcome and how they're contributing to it. We then can put this up live. We can show everyone it. This is how it's going. And what I take great inspiration from Ushahidi. We could Coney this in a really creative way, right? We could say, we're telling our story, but through our experiences with you. How do you feel about that? Could we have sessions where people get down together with their cell phones? Can Ushahidi maybe set up a page, right? Where the people in Bolivia who this report is talking about, and that means it has to be able to talk to them. It can't be written, it has to be visual, it has to be powerful. Can we do it in a way that they can then say, I think that's pretty close, or here's my comment on it, or this is wrong, and all that, and that again becomes our report. And so it's actually a really powerful process. What we're going to do then is we work in 11 places around the world, 10 countries, but 2 states in India. So those are countries, really. We're going to roll it out country by country every month. So if you're engaged with us in a particular country, we can give it to you right away. That's fine. We're going to roll it out every month, and then for 1 month, we're going to do a global critique of Water for People publicly. What it'll do, driving towards those outcomes, showing those values in a totally different way, it'll actually lead to that big change, we think. So that's what we're trying to do. If we don't blow up reporting, we're not going to get there. So.
Come on up. Thank you, Ned. That was great. Tris, come on up. Join us for our 4th chair. And we'd actually like the rest of you to rotate through a 4th chair, too, if anyone is audacious enough to participate.
Hi,
Tris, tell us briefly what you do and give us a couple reflections on what you heard today.
I'll start off by saying I'm not ambidextrous. Can I sit down? No. So I work for the Oak Foundation. It's a Swiss foundation, family foundation. And this is the first time anyone from Oak has come to this event. So I'm kind of just trying to take it all in kind of sponge mode, just absorbing it all and still digesting it. I've found this really interesting. You know, obviously we're asking our grantees to report to us. So this was really interesting. Of course, I have some issues with it.
I'm sure you do. Good.
And so if I share a couple of immediate thoughts is, you know, if I understand what you're presenting here, it's pretty sophisticated tools you're trying to utilize to develop this reporting.
Actually, the beauty of it is we have it all, and it'll be all automated. All of us have it. We all have it. We just don't put it together in a creative way because we're trying to say, hey, I need to report to the Oak Foundation, so I got to report on that sliver of, and your sliver could be enormous, but that part of it, as opposed to saying, let's put it together in a creative way, I'll still tell you what you want to know. And I bet I'll convince you that this is actually what you want to know. Because every foundation we work with, right, has a different reporting requirement. We're in the water and sanitation space, right? Every foundation, every corporation has a different reporting requirement, and I think it's partially because I'm not convinced you guys know what you're asking for. I think you're, right? You're just like, okay, I think I want to know this, I think I want to know this. Again, I'm trying to justify the use of these funds, and I understand that. But if we could sit back and say, actually, we're trying to solve this big problem. We're trying to solve this big problem, and this is your contribution to that. This is why it's so important. This is what's going well and not going well. I think every time I roll this out with some of the partners we work with, they're all saying, yeah, I think you're right. I think, actually, if you told me that, I'm good. So I don't need 40 people writing reports to individual groups. I need one process that lays it out.
I kind of, if I understand what you're saying, on one hand, I agree. What I'm struggling with is whether all organizations have the capacity to develop that kind of reporting.
Okay, so
just to give a little bit more background on Oak. So we work with more what we might call kind of traditional NGOs, for want of a better description, in myriad different sectors across. I think we work in fund work in 45 different countries. From community-based organizations that, reading and writing is a challenge, to most sophisticated human rights projects that are doing satellite tracking of displacement. So you've got this huge breadth of capacity, languages, resources, So trying to get a handle on a bit more detail on exactly what the sort of frame is that you're really using, whether that could be applicable to that range of grantees. And can I just say one more point? And we make several hundred grants a year, and many of them are multi-year grants, so we're tracking several thousand grants. So we're getting a whole different load of formats with different levels of capacity. It's a huge resource for us, and the resource has got to be going somewhere. It's either happening on the NGO end or it's happening on the foundation end. So
yeah, well, let me abstract it out a little bit. I think what we're talking about is not so much the technical capacity of one organization to come up with sophisticated measurement, but what we're really looking at is a translation of program activities into outcomes. And that has to happen on both sides. So the Skoll Foundation, a couple days ago, unveiled their approach to outcomes and the outcomes that they value. And the reason why reporting and measurement is so complicated, I think as Ned points out, is most foundations don't know what outcomes they want to buy. They know what programs they want to fund. As a result, we're trying to make 1,000 flowers bloom and aggregate all these apples and oranges. But when you look across the 100 different programs you're funding around the world in different languages and different countries, there probably are 5 to 10 common outcomes that you're looking for. In fact, the research that we've done across the entire social sector show that there are only 65 common outcomes in the entire world. If you look at thousands and thousands of outcomes across thousands of organizations, which we have done, you will realize that every single one of them is either trying to increase access to a vital product or service like water or the internet or food, is trying to reduce the incidence of a bad behavior, whether it's violence or drugs, is trying to increase positive youth development, is trying to increase access to education. There's only a few things that we're all really trying to do. We all have multivariate ways of how to get there. And the problem is measurement has fallen down to the level of program activity rather than focused on the level of outcome, and that's what makes it easier.
Well, again, I'll challenge that because we find ourselves repeating again and again, clearly define what it is you want to achieve. What is it in 5 years' time success looks like? Define it. And what we tend to get is a load of activities. This is what we want to do.
Totally
So that we are just, that's our mantra.
We're saying the same thing.
So we're actually saying the same thing. I agree with you.
Yeah, no, I think that's the challenge. And so I think what's interesting and what this sort of shift in the world is revealing is that because social problems are getting worse and because there are more funds now trying to solve those problems, the demand is not for more data, it's for outcomes. And the only way to be able to clarify reporting is to rise to the level to say, I know what I want to know. I want to know if I've moved the needle on these 5 things. So don't give me a bunch of gobbledygook. Give me your contribution to these outcomes.
Right.
And I hope that we're agreeing on the same outcomes. You can have any strategy you want to get there. And I think that's both the nexus of Ned's conversation and Zika's point. As a company, they're not just trying to do good. Right. They're trying to lower their costs. They're trying to streamline their outsourcing. So how can the world of social change conspire to produce an outcome they want to buy? What do you think? Yeah. First behind you and then in the red sweater.
So, I'm Michael Chertok from Digital Divide Data. We're a social enterprise that does workforce development to create jobs and opportunities for youth in developing countries. We're really grateful for Cisco's support of our work. And one of the things that Cisco did as they gave us our last grant was to ask us about outcomes. And what we said is it's ultimately about the revenue that we create as a social enterprise and the number of jobs that we create. And it became really clear that we could be focused on those outcomes. Yeah. However, the next question was, well, you're not going to produce those outcomes for a year or more. What are the indicators to show the progress that you're getting to those outcomes? So my question is actually for Zika. It was incredibly impressive to show the enormous lift over 3 years, to show now this ICT sector in Palestine is 11%. How did you think about what were the milestone indicators along the way? Because I know how Cisco is probably very demanding of you for data. How are you thinking about, how did you measure progress towards that 11, towards growing that sector to become 11% of the economy?
So thank you for the question. I think so the ecosystem was a very important part of it. So in developing the, there was the emphasis was on changing the mindset and the culture, not only of the people, the companies in Palestine, but also of the relief agencies and the government agencies that were supporting Palestine. So for instance, USAID and the World Bank that were there and were thinking, this is a third world country, so we'll kind of think how to help them, on a very kind of low level, rather than thinking of, getting the vision of what Palestine could become. So it was a lot of convincing and lobbying that had to be done on the level of those potential partners that could come along, like USAID, World Bank, and actually the Palestinian government as well. So that was one side, so for everybody to buy into the dream, I think that was the greatest challenge. And then once they bought into the dream, it was easy to bring to kind of pave the road towards the dream. So I think that was the important and the difficult part. And once we started employing people, and actually for each job that you create in the high-tech industry in Palestine, you get, of engineering, like a professional job, you get 2 to 3 additional jobs that support this job. So, the formula was very easy to create and to show that other jobs could happen as well.
Great. Yes, sir.
Barry Childs, founder of Africa Bridge. Our organization is focused on transforming the lives of children by creating sustainable income streams. I think the big issue for me is us as NGOs. We've been sucked into projects, measurements, so it's a matter of mindset, really, that we have to break our mindset and think about solutions and the other issues. So I think it's up to us to create a new mindset around what needs to be done.
I think that's well said. I will also just comment to say that part of it is breaking the mindset. Part of it is that we're selling to the wrong people. We are selling to funders who don't consume our outcomes. And as a result, our sector is stuck in a dyadic, dysfunctional economic system where the suppliers of money to the NGOs are not the consumers of our outcomes. And that never happens in any other part of the economy. The answer is not to reform foundations, it's to ignore them. It's actually true. It is not to ignore them completely, it's to ignore them as the sole source of funding for our work. Foundations are great trigger funders and supporters, but the market offers us a tremendous amount of money because they value our outcomes, meaning they consume our outcomes and they have the ability to pay. And every organization in this room has a challenge to figure out how do we find not our funders, but our impact buyers, the people who value our outcomes and have an ability to pay. And I think like Ned is a great example of how to do that. Maybe you can share a quick point about how you've pivoted on that.
Yeah, I mean, real quickly, we've taken a range of our funders in the corporate sector, and we have basically shown them that through our work, we're opening markets for meters, for example. So key to everyone forever is water flows, people pay, all that kind of stuff. Most parts of the world, people see meters as privatization and it's a disaster, but because we reframed the program, we basically were able to say, no, meters matter for you, so you have a constant supply and all that kind of stuff. Well, meter companies are now sitting back going, ooh, wait a minute, we've been beating our heads against the wall, fighting anti-privatization and all this stuff. Water for People is actually opening markets for meters right now. I want to be on that train. I want to be part of that movement. And so what we're seeing is we're doing what we want to do, and all of a sudden the people who are benefiting from that outcome are saying, I want to be associated with that. We haven't bought a single meter from one of these companies. That's not what they're buying. They're buying the legitimacy of meters, right? And the opening of that market.
And market development, which is exactly what Zika is buying.
Totally.
Please. Yes, Kat.
Great panel. My name is Kat Warner. I'm from Abbott. I have a question for Zika. In terms of reporting, you have shown how the 11% has grown in ITC sector in Palestine. Now, how are you reporting that internally for, is it profitable for the company side? So in terms of, is it part of your annual report? How are you sharing this? So lessons learned within the company on this new approach.
That's a great question. I didn't figure it out yet. I'm working on it. Actually, we are in the mission measurement is actually helping us write a white paper on the work on the impact. But I'll tell you, one of the things that apart from the, we actually, I forgot to mention, we received the ACE Award from Secretary Clinton for the work we've done in Palestine. So that was a good thing, you know, we kind of sold internally. But also, we actually, by developing this market, by the work that we've done, we actually went the extra mile for different parts of the business. So we kind of helped create a venture capital fund so our business development could come to a fund that was already ready to just invest, because that's what they know what to do. Or we kind of helped create a conference in Palestine that people came from around the world to talk about ICT, so our salespeople could present there and, you know, kind of sell their products and meet with the governments, etc. Or for the R&D, we became the arm that enabled enabled them to get good talent close by in the same time zone, etc. So we kind of did the legwork for different parts of the business. And I think that's how we sold ourselves to the business.
It is a challenge. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Hi, my name is Natasha, and I work with the King Khalid Foundation in Saudi Arabia. I heard once a professor say that a sign of a great leader is to actually get themselves out of their job. So basically, if they are no longer needed, that means they've done a good job and someone can go on.
Well.
And I think that should be the case for nonprofit organizations. A sign of a good nonprofit organization is to actually get themselves, and that's the problem. They don't want to get themselves out of their job. They want to keep doing the same thing. They don't want to get the solution. You know, they don't want to resolve the issue because they feel, what are we going to do if that's gone? So this whole, I think we're all caught in this cycle of kind of wanting the solution, but at the same time, not really wanting the solution because, you know, we want to continue to have our jobs and do our work and be passionate and do all of that, which is great. But I think it is all about changing the mindset. And all of you have a very business-like mindset, which is not prevalent in the nonprofit sector. Still not.
It's becoming
more.
And so
it is, but you know, in many countries around the world, I can tell you in the Gulf and in a lot of the Middle East, it's not. And like you said, you have these organizations that are very tiny, without capacity, not knowing how to do things, and they want their jobs. They want to keep doing whatever they're doing, you know. And so how do we change that, and how do we bring in some of these business kind of sets of skills to the nonprofits, and that would help the foundations, and then they could ask for different things, and it's kind of like
comment, and then I'd love your response.
Can I throw something in as well?
Yeah, sure. The quick comment is, I actually don't think it's about making nonprofits more business-like, and I'm actually not trying to bring a business orientation. I'm trying to bring a results orientation and an impact orientation to the market, and all I'm seeing is that there are increasingly more powerful funders than nice, rich people who value these outcomes, and they care passionately, and they actually care from a business point of view whether or not these problems are getting solved. So it's not really a matter of reporting or whether you have the capacity. You better figure it out, and there's an enormous amount of money if you can. So it's more a matter of return and reward for producing an outcome than it is supporting nice people doing nice things and hoping it adds up to something.
Yeah, I was just going to say I got in real trouble. I was on a panel a couple months ago, and a colleague from another organization said, we're really excited. We just celebrated our 30th year in Ghana. And you know, we really know the government, we really know the people and all that. And I was like, shame on you. You know, that's not a source of celebration, that's a disaster. And so again, what we've tried to do through this program, not the reporting but the Everyone Forever, is actually, you know, one of two things are going to happen. And I think we will hold ourselves to that. One is we get to everyone and we succeed with forever and you don't need us anymore. Great. And actually the entire structure of the program, it's very interesting because it's envisioned without us. You know, what does this look like without us? The second is if we get to everyone and it doesn't last forever, then we shouldn't be there. And so we're going to flag it. That's exactly what this is. We're going to flag it and then be like, you know, it's an iterative process. Water and sanitation is tough, but let's put our necks on the line. Let's actually try to do that, and because those are the two outcomes. And we either earn it or we don't. Again, people love that. That's what people are buying into. They're like, I'm tired. I don't want to talk about the water problem in Rwanda anymore. I want Rwanda to have water flowing because business thrives and because then I can produce Coke and I can produce Pepsi and I can do all this other stuff. That's what they want, right?
Okay, Zika, what do you say?
So I just want to when we came to Palestine and also in the other programs that we do, when we start with the thinking of the exit in mind. So even if we bring the know-how, we kind of try to create something that's sustainable, like sustainable business or sustainable ecosystem, so we can actually live. And we're actually exiting Palestine this year, and we'll celebrate it this June, right?
Yes, ma'am. On the wall? Yes.
I guess one of the observations.
Who are you? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Lori Kaisi, and I work at the Public Health School in London now, and have started and run a variety of not-for-profits over the years. The ones that I've worked on probably are closer to the experience of the Oak Foundation because they're working on issues like reducing violence against women and some of these really hard, intractable social problems where finding the impact investor that's interested in that outcome becomes quite difficult. Having a good theory about what will actually work to change, or a metric of what success looks like that can be measured in a time frame that is acceptable to investors. So, you know, I have the metric, I can measure it, but it takes a decade. It doesn't take 2-year project cycle. And so I guess I would caution us. I think what you guys are doing is great. At the same time, I think it is not a model for all of the issues that we need to deal with. And I think the report, and yet you're pointing up common problems, because the reporting problem is one that kills us as well. Yeah. It kills everyone. Yeah. And I think one of the things that's making it worse, and this, I guess this is the question perhaps to Oak or to anyone that I've observed, is I used to be able to, 20 years ago, say, here's my program of work. You either buy into it, and you can, some of you have a big sliver, some of you have a small sliver, and I will, you know, this is what we're going to deliver, and you either buy into it or you don't. And we would turn down money. But they said, this is the vision, this is what we will, you know, produce. Now that's not possible. No one's giving that kind of money any longer. It's become so projectized from bilaterals or multilaterals. And it's all part of a discourse of accountability and aid transparency, which is defined now as transparency and accountability up to taxpayers, but not down at all to beneficiaries or clients or customers or whatever you want to call them. And I just wondered if anyone had any reflections on that, and how those of us who can't play in the space that you're playing in can start to raise some of the same issues, though, because they do kill, they're just choking off
They are.
innovation.
Let me share a couple framing comments, and then maybe the panel can respond as well. So, first of all, I believe, and my research shows that any nonprofit organization chasing any outcome can find a way to connect their outcomes to the market, and that there are a new set of stakeholders in this social capital market. They're not all corporations. They are what we call upstream consumers. There are other service providers. There are beneficiaries that can pay. There are corporate partners, and there are also social investors that are outcomes driven. Every one of these types of new investors, and I talk about this in my book, The End of Fundraising, focuses on outcomes and valuing outcomes. So even if you take violence against women, right, your first question was it's difficult to measure, it takes a long time. The fact of the matter is there is a way to reduce things, just like a net present value of impact, to a measurable stream of intermediate outcomes. Smoking prevention is something that we've tried in developing parts of the world to measure for many years. We can't wait 20 years to see if a kid doesn't smoke for youth smoking prevention. But we do know from research, and I'm sure you know from research on women's violence, that there are proxies from all the RCTs that wonderful people who do RCTs have done, that we know that, for example, in positive youth development, that there are certain protective factors against youth smoking. If you have a positive adult role model, if you have structured after-school activities, if you have build self-esteem, there are protective factors that are developmental assets that you can invest in and achieve that effectively inoculate youth against the future risk of smoking. So we don't need to wait 20 years. And I'm sure that there are those same protective factors against women, whether it's access to redress or equitable opportunities for legal redress or training or other types of things that you can do. So the measurement challenge is solved by measuring proxies that are research-based, that are leading indicators of future outcomes, because we can't afford to wait 10 years to measure something. The second thing is in terms of value. The fact of the matter is that there are many people, entities, and organizations that are free riding off the outcomes that we're creating upstream. There are corporations that are benefiting by having stable families that are not falling apart. There are businesses that are benefiting from women that are not the victims of violence and are able to work. There are communities that are benefiting. There are other service providers like hospitals and healthcare providers that are able to make revenue based on providing the services that you're providing. And so one quick example that we found was with Ronald McDonald houses, which are all over the world. Who would think that helping a family have a place to stay when their kids are in critical care in the hospital would have any economic value whatsoever? But what we found when we looked at these new set of impact buyers was that hospitals were actually free riding off the outcomes of Ronald McDonald House. 70% of the leading children's hospitals in America have a Ronald McDonald program. And when we interviewed and found the impact that they valued, they said, well, you don't understand. I mean, we're getting new patients that we would never otherwise get. Our doctors and our nurses have higher employee satisfaction than would otherwise have. Our patients that are Ronald McDonald patients have higher customer satisfaction on our Press Ganey surveys that matter for our insurance reimbursements. And oh, by the way, because patient-centered care or family-centered care is so powerful, we are actually helping kids heal faster, and as a result, we're turning over beds faster, on average 1/3 faster than the average patient, which allows us to do more procedures, make more money. And so I said, well, then why don't you give any money to Ronald McDonald House, to the hospital CEO? And he said, oh, actually, they never come to us and ask for it. They always go to our foundation and ask for a $25,000 grant. So my point is, I think we need to start to look at the value chain of our outcomes and look upstream at what benefits are being created and who is benefiting from them and who are the adjacent beneficiaries, and start to find ways of selling that social value proposition. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Roman from Australia, and I've set up quite a few NGOs over the time, and like you, I offend lots of people in Australia. Basically because yeah, absolutely. In 2000, we had a social entrepreneurs forum in Melbourne, and Pamela Hartigan spoke, and she describe the difference between a social manager and a social entrepreneur. And I think that's the lady in Saudi Arabia's issue, that social managers of social enterprises are generally what I call grey cardi fundraisers. You know, grey cardigans are really daggy, and you wouldn't wear one. So, so they're the kind of people that are there. And then I went on to learn more about entrepreneurship, and you have to create the A-team. You need the grey cardi to go in and do all that foundation stuff, but you need the person like you guys at the front going out there really looking at how to create that impact. So it's more about collaboration. So I wanted to talk about a project and just give you a bit of feedback about evaluation, because in Australia now, all the big foundations, the philanthropic foundations, always want evaluation as part of the outcome. And for small NGOs, putting 20% of your budget into evaluation is crippling. So I've worked on a universal literacy program, because you're going to fall over now, but in Australia 46% of our adults are functionally illiterate. That is an Australian Bureau of Statistics. It is mind-boggling. Our biggest area of growth in illiteracy is in young boys. So we are looking at programs of how to deal with that, because our biggest growth in employment is for young boys to get in trucks in mining companies. So they can't even read the stuff to get their license, to get a truck license, So working with mining companies, we've actually developed a universal literacy program. And in that, we collaborated with a university to get the first ever longitudinal literacy study. That has been the most powerful tool we could have ever imagined, because now that relationship with mining companies has leveraged government to actually put money into literacy, which has never happened before on a universal level. So I guess what I'm saying is, yes, measurements are great, but they have to be quality measurements too. So the 300-page report, which is the first of the first 5-year evaluation of our project, and yes, it takes time, you get very old in this process, but that is actually now for want of a better word, a benchmark for other states in Australia and for other countries. So it's that, you really have to put your time and effort into those relationships, and the university that came on owns it as much as we do. So that's the other thing, the collaboration of getting that partner who really believes and cares in what you're doing and the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. So I just thought that, you were talking about something that was, you really have to buy it.
Right. Let me just get some people from the back. Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry. Passing.
Hi, my name's Richard Graham from Comic Relief. I had 2 questions mainly for you, Ned. And the first was, is there, or do you feel that there's a need to be greater convergence, say within the water and sanitation sector, around common indicators or common metrics of what success looks like? So that was my first question. My second question, I was just trying to imagine your diagram, and is the goal in this framework that you've described a kind of open source website which would allow any stakeholder, whether I'm a community member with access to the internet, whether I'm the municipal authority, a funder, an implementer, an interested party, anybody could go in and look at the same data? And if that is the idea, I think it's a fascinating and very exciting idea.
We're also looking at, those are great questions. We're also trying to find a creative way to let people comment on it. And that's sort of what I meant by Koning doing what Ushahidi did. So put this out in a way that different people can actually engage and comment, because that actually will make us better as well. Your point is 1,000% right. The target for this is not actually the donor. It really isn't. I think it'll sell to the donor, right? The target of this is ourselves and our partners and the people that we're talking about. And so what we're trying to do is constantly push the boundaries of letting people talk for themselves, not through the intermediary of us as
I
an
suppose
NGO.
I would say as a funder that something like that would be incredibly attractive.
Exactly.
So I think sometimes there's been a
Right.
conversation this morning about sort of discrepancies in what people are looking for, and maybe I'm being desperately naive, but I'm not sure that those discrepancies are as acute as some people make out.
I agree with you. I mean, the point of water and sanitation at the end of the day is water's flowing, people are defecating into a toilet, and people are washing their hands. That's it. And there's lots of things we can do to see how we're going along the way towards that. But if we can frame this conversation and make it a conversation where people's voices can engage, it is powerful. It's really powerful. And I don't think it's that expensive. I mean, we're doing this stuff with flip cameras.
Gentleman here in the corridor had a comment. I remembered. And then we'll get you in the back.
Thank you very much. I'm very much enjoying the presentations. My name's Ed Kane. I'm with the Hilton Foundation. And I'm building on that last question, the open source information on the web. I'm concerned about the ecosystem and the and your graph up there, whatever that presentation was, whatever that mess is. What role, what mechanisms in terms of the ecosystem do you foresee in terms of the role of government, the role of WATSAN committees, for instance, which are pretty much NGO government driven now, but bringing in the private sector and the other players into those mechanisms? So do you envision, in addition to that open source approach, which I think is very attractive, a new kind of mechanism of governance to help coordinate or herd these cats that you're trying to bring together?
It's exactly what's happening in places like Rwanda. Is they're now saying to other actors in the water space, we'd like that full coverage model that's going on in Rwanda. It's our program. Government is saying it's our program, and it is their program. We're backing it. We're saying, you've got this goal to 2020. Let's back it. Come on, let's get in there. Let's do that. Let's make Rwanda that country, because that's their ambition, and they're putting money in, and they're doing all of that. The goal of this over time, this will fade away. Let's be honest. This will go away over time, and other things will emerge. But it's really around how do we frame the discussion so we're focused on those outcomes? How do we draw people in to comment on their own development? And how do we value that? How do we really value it? So it's not open source just to be kind of cool. It's open source and engaging, and we're really trying to figure out the ways that people would engage with it, because that's the dialogue. And then if everyone's focused on that outcome, we're not having the same conversations that we're having right now about where's my project.
Okay, in the last 10 minutes, we're going to have some rapid fire questions and answers. So yes, in the back? In the blue shirt there?
Does the person...
You have the mic, you must just go.
Well, let's... okay, please go ahead, and then after you, Martin.
And then walk into the...
Yes.
Sorry, but the person who owns the mic tends to
Please,
floor.
bring it in.
Don't listen to him.
I'm Beth Searle. I'm with Pacific Community Ventures in San Francisco, California. We are providers of capital and advice to small businesses to create jobs in low-income communities in the United States. And so we either invest equity or debt. We have to raise that money from underlying investors. So I feel like we have to marry this conversation to the whole developing impact investing world. And Kathy, if I miss something here, I'm going to ask you to pipe up. So increasingly, and not increasing fast enough for my liking, but increasingly, you have fund managers who are making investments for underlying investors who want financial and social impact, where the financial return is table stakes. It gets you to be considered to get an allocation from an underlying investor. But being able to distinguish your social return gives you some competitive advantage relative to the guy down the street who's trying to raise a fund as well. And at that point, the measurement of social impact has economic value of its own, and there's a competition to show that you have more social impact, so you can raise more dollars, so you can invest more. And then there's an incentive for the marketplace to get really efficient about measuring impact. And I think we need to stop talking about donors and talk more about investors and take that framework. And the last thing I'll just say on this subject related to this, a PCV measured its own, the impact of our work since the beginning in 1999. And in 2005, that turned into a business for us, which is now generates 20 to 25% of our revenue. And it's unrestricted, good old spend it any way you want revenue, as opposed to the restricted grant of a foundation, which then requires the onerous reporting, that you're talking about. So I think, the more that we can get this to be a business,
Totally agree.
it gets more efficient, then reporting will get easier and less onerous for you, and it won't be 20% of your budget, and there's an incentive to take the market and put it to work in that niche as well.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So sorry that I stole my...
No, please go ahead. And let's make these last round of questions, have everyone give a chance to give your questions, then we'll make a final round of comments.
Hello, my name is Martin Burton. I'm from Fundación Paraguaya. I'd like to congratulate you for this fantastic forum. In the first slide you showed, Waterman.
Waterman. That's so interesting. Most people call me Toilet Man,
Okay,
so
yeah,
I've come somewhere.
In your first line, you mentioned improve water access, and in the last line, you said eradicate water poverty.
Yep.
There's a contradiction there. The best one is the last one.
Yes.
What we are doing is trying to eliminate poverty. We have taken away, alleviate, fight, combat, make history to eliminate poverty in the 50,000 households with whom we're working. One of the indicators is water and sanitation. There are others that are education, vaccines, etc. And we have developed a self-reporting mechanism by which families self-assess, looking at 3 photographs for each indicator. No latrine is red, bad latrine is yellow, and okay latrine is green.
Yep.
And people point at the photograph that represents their indicator. It resolves the issue of interviewing. It is country specific because every country has different representations. But what we're doing is we're mapping all the households of the country, or at least we want to do that, so that we see all the families that, in this particular case, still do not have proper water.
Yep.
So the idea is to eliminate all the red spots, because we can, as it was mentioned here, we can fight poverty and improve people's lives. I mean, I'm part of the Acción International Microfinance Network. They just dropped the word poverty from their mission statement this week to provide financial inclusion to help people.
I love that.
Martin, thank you.
That's
Thank you. Let's pass the microphone, or actually, we don't have time for the microphone. Let's just stand up and say some quick questions, and we'll make some final responses. So you had a question, and I know you had a question.
Tristan's under Acumen Fund. Do you have any plans to share the system that you're developing?
Yeah, we're launching it. We're actually going to show the whole thing at Stockholm Water Week in August, and then have at it.
Okay. So you're all the code, all of
everything.
Awesome.
So we'll hold the answers to the end. So ask a bunch of quick questions. Yes, you were next.
Yeah, it came up at some point that the people participating doesn't necessarily have the skills to do this stuff. So we write reports instead. Well, that's a bloody bad answer, isn't it? So I work with Ned on a piece of this, and it's open source. And I can hear I'm going to work more with him on other pieces to make sure that everyone can get access to these kind of tools, right? Because that's what we need to do. It's very simple. So we can lift the whole sector. Everybody who works in this stuff can get access to this. We're a non-profit, and we're here to make your life easier, right?
Thank you. You had a quick comment, and then over there. And then we'll take these 2 final comments, and then we'll wrap up real quick.
Hi, Max Martin from Impact Economy. I agree with your diagnostic in general. I mean, non-profits need to transition from this, I would say, anecdote, guild-based marketing to knowledge management organizations. But I think if we take what you're saying a step further, the question then is, well, on which issues will you be able actually to really do this? As was said before, you know, there are areas where you have pent-up demand for goods and services. I buy it with water, can work. Yep. Human rights, I'm not sure.
Harder.
Let's see.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
Secondly, there is an issue around critical mass of the organization. And I think that, for me, begs the question, I'd love you to comment on, what does this mean in terms of, say, M&A in the sector? Because clearly, you know, to get to this critical mass, you get a good effort-reward ratio, you may have to combine resources. Wouldn't that be something that a donor, say the classical foundation that someone signed out in the discussion here, should play an active role in then, in your model?
Yes, thank you. And final comment? I'm just like 1 minute quick wrap up.
I'm David Damager. I'm a current Skoll scholar here at the SBS, but I was a former director of Engineers Without Borders working on water sanitation in Africa. I'm interested in hearing more about two things. One is incentives for using this system. So there's a great comment about power, and all the power seems to come down from the donors, but people have, what are the incentives for people to be providing this? And the second is institutionalizing this within, I mean, building on the comment of governments. This has got to be taken on within the system, and more about thinking about how do you institutionalize this. So I'd love to hear more about those two points.
Thank you. We're going to have a quick 30-second wrap-up. We'll start with you, Tris, because we'd love your observations from a bilateral point of view.
I mean, it's fascinating, really great discussion. I really enjoyed it a lot, and we're grappling with similar issues. I mean, on some of these projects that we're finding hard to kind of identify really what is to define what that success looks like in a clear way. We're taking some kind of portfolio kind of approaches, so where we'll take a suite of 6 or 8, 10 grants, maybe they're over a 5-7 year period, and try to look at the impact on that bigger issue where we find it hard to get down into the details. A couple of points on activities, and I take on board a lot of concerns and issues people have with that. For a donor, it helps with understanding, does this NGO know what they're talking about? It's one thing to say this is what we're going to do and it's clearly defined, but are those steps really going to get there? I mean, it's fairly obvious, but also a benefit for the donor when it comes to end of grant reporting, of course, is learning for us. And something like this would be great learning for us. We try to be proactive and informed about the issues that we fund on. So that's a critical point.
All right, we got to cut up. I will also tell you that if there are any foundations, including yours, Tris, that are interested in thinking about how do you measure it, impact at a foundation level, I want to call out Renee Kaplan here from Skoll, who's working on this at the Skoll Foundation, I think can provide some learnings as well. Okay, Ned, quick wrap up.
When we launched Flow a number of years ago, the initial reaction was it's going to be really expensive, really hard, and all that kind of stuff. Now the discussion is how do we get it out, how do we roll it out, and all that. And I think that's what we are with this. Everybody trying to get their head around our next step, frankly, is throw it out there. Let's have people beat it up. Go for it and all that stuff, because we really want to institutionalize it. We really want to change the debate on aid transparency. We want to put ourselves out there. So stay involved and feel free to swing. We like that.
That's great. Zika?
Well, I think my input to all of that is this is a great conversation, and I'm like still really impressed with all the people I'm meeting and talking to. I think there's a great opportunity here to partner, to find, kind of form your own coalitions of people who are in the same kind of field in what you do, or can complete you and work together, and then, build a common dream together. I think you can create a much bigger impact.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Renee Kaplan, who is a visionary for this session.
For all your support
and then, come engage with us afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah.